In this video, we'll learn how to paint with symmetry here inside of MARI. Okay, great. So now that we have talked a little bit about our brushes and how to use them to paint onto our mesh, what I'd like to talk to you about is symmetry. Now, symmetry is something that is really popular in high-resolution sculpting applications when you're sculpting out models so that you can basically create details across a line of symmetry. Now, MARI is a little different from a sculpting application in the way it utilizes symmetry. Remember, MARI is a projection painting program using a paint buffer to project paint. So, in the case of MARI, we aren't necessarily painting symmetrically right onto the mesh. Rather, we're painting symmetrically into the paint buffer. Let me just go ahead and hold the Z key on my keyboard. Now, that's going to access this tool right here. That is the Zoom Paint Buffer tool. So if we were to zoom out on the paint buffer by simply holding that Z down and dragging to the left here, you can see here I have sort of a visual representation of the paint buffer in these little white corner pieces as well as a resolution and a bit depth. So again, these are all options that are available to us inside the painting panel, or palette rather, right over here under paint buffer. And you can see that these correspond with these two different properties here. So what I've done is I've zoomed out on the paint buffer so we can basically see all of it at the same time. Now, again, we can create a line of symmetry for this paint buffer, and that is done using the mirroring toolbar. So again, if you come up here, right-click, you'll need to scroll down here till you see your toolbars, and I apologize, this is off of the recording area here. Let me just see if I can't maybe fix that. No, it's still going to be out, but there is a mirroring option here, and I actually do have that open. It's going to be this toolbar right here. So there's 4 different options here, and they're really pretty self-explanatory. This first one is going to be your default state, and that indicates that symmetry is currently turned off. So if I were to come over here and just click on this next button, what you'll see is a very, very faint red line that appears right down the center of my paint buffer. Now what I could do here is I could hold down the Z key and access that Zoom Paint Buffer tool again, and I could reset that so that we're zoomed back in. And this is a model that is very asymmetrical because it's already been posed up. But that's not to say we couldn't use the symmetry painting to paint a symmetrical detail. So let's just maybe use this little armored gauntlet she's wearing as a place to do that. So I'll just go ahead and right click and go to visibility and hide the unselected, and we'll just zoom in on this. And I think as we get this, you'll notice there's that red line I was referring to. So there we go. We can sit here and we can orient this around inside of our canvas, and we can try and get that lined up if we're wanting to paint from left to right or from right to left in a symmetrical fashion here. And I have grabbed a new layer here and just called it decal inside my metal details group. And let's go ahead and choose a brush. I'll just go ahead and bring up my shelf pop-up. We'll go to basic brushes, and let's maybe just choose this hard 75. And over in my brush editor, you can see what this looks like. Now, the actual scratch pad here is changing because I currently have symmetry turned on. So you can see what we're painting with symmetrically. Let me just hold down the R key and shrink that down a bit. And you can see the only thing that pressure is controlling right now is the flow. I'd like to go ahead and do radius as well. So we end up with something that looks sort of like that. All right, great. So now that that's done, we can come over here, choose our color. Maybe we wanted to do some kind of an ornate decal on this piece of armor. Maybe she's a part of a clan or a tribe or something like that, and there's some kind of a decal we wanted to paint on here. So we could come over and hold down the J key, which is going to quickly access the color pop-up. Again, this is a quick access to what we would see normally here inside the colors palette, but in the case of this, it's right there on the canvas, so we can quickly choose a color. Maybe we want to go with kind of a deep red color here. You can see what color I have currently selected over on the far right. And now we're ready to paint. So we could come in here and we could start to hand paint our detail. And you can see here that we're painting across that red line in terms of symmetry. So we can come in and we can paint whatever it is we're wanting to paint. And again, this is inside of Mari's paint buffer. So this is going to behave no different than any other paint that you apply to your asset. We can come in here before we've baked that down, and we can actually reposition if we want to. We can maybe make sure that we are currently exactly where we want this. So maybe we want this actually up here a little bit. We can come in, reposition, and that's in a pretty good spot. So then we can come in and bake that down. Now, this is creating a line of symmetry vertically in our canvas here. So let me go ahead and just bake that down. I'll just tap the B key, and I'll jump over here into the mirroring toolbar again, and we're going to go ahead and switch that. So notice what happens if I click this button here. That line of symmetry is drawn horizontally across our canvas. So now if we wanted to add in some additional symmetrical detail here, I'll just zoom in nice and close on that. You can see my little scribbles there. And we can come in here and we can start to create our own little details. Whatever details we want to create, right there. And it's being created across that line of symmetry. So this is something that you can work on either side of the line of symmetry. We don't necessarily need to have one side that we can draw on, one side we can't. We can paint on either side of that line of symmetry. And again, it works for both painting and erasing. So if I came in here and held down my eraser, you can see here we were able to erase both sides through the symmetry. All right. Let's go ahead and check out this last one. This one is actually pretty cool for creating really neat details. This is quad symmetry. So basically what we've done here is we've drawn a vertical line and a horizontal line of symmetry across our canvas here. So I'm actually going to come in and just choose patches, fill with transparency, because I'm going to get rid of that paint that I had currently on that layer. And we'll just jump in here and we'll start to paint in using this quad symmetry. So you can see here, I can come in and I can start to paint. And we can start to get some really interesting ornate type effects here. So this is Mari's implementation of symmetry. Maybe a little bit different than a sculpting application if you're used to sculpting in symmetry, say in Mudbox or maybe even ZBrush. But we do have this feature available to us here inside of Mari, and it's a lot of fun to use. So you can see we can start to create some really interesting additions to our textures using symmetry here inside of Mari.